From the studios in San Diego, California, this is Mixed Up Sports on mixedupsports.com, powered by twitch.tv, here on this Monday, the 28th day of March 2016, just a couple minutes past the 6 o'clock hour. Crucial Ryan to my left, Nick Sexton to my right. Boys, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Doing great.
That's good to hear, because this this past weekend has been a wild one, especially in the world of college basketball, and I said it on Friday. There is one team left in this tournament that can take it to Kansas. There is one team left in this tournament that has the possibility of beating Kansas, and that team was Villanova. And as I predicted, they did.
Well, if I recall correctly, I mean, we all at one point had stated that Villanova could easily beat this team. And, well, not easily, but essentially battle Kansas and win, in which case they did. It was a game to watch, necessarily. You know, when you have a 1-2 seed going at it, it's obviously going to be a close game. We eventually, in our bracket, we had Kansas going all the way and losing to Michigan State. Well, just like everybody else's bracket, that's gone out the window the first week. But this was a close game to watch. And when you have a guy, when your player Chris Jenkins makes 2 free throws with under 15 seconds left, it kind of pushed the game out of reach for Kansas not to be able to come back and win it. Villanova being able to hold it out by a 5-point lead. But you got to give it to Kansas. They fought their way through, still being a number 1 seed. They didn't doubt that seeding. Everybody else we were worried about, did they deserve it? At one point we thought Michigan State should have been first seed, and they weren't. They lost it to, I believe, Virginia, if I remember correctly. But the point is, Kansas was the only team that we felt, strongly by that they deserved to be where they're at, and they fought hard. And, you got to give it to Villanova for sticking it to them.
I mean, what I think this proves is that with the Villanova starting lineup, right? Every single player on that starting lineup for Villanova, they were either a junior or a senior, except for one of their guards, Jalen Brunson. Well, you go to the other side, in Kansas, they're one of those teams where players go to just be a one-and-done type player. So, I mean, this kind of almost proves that if you stay, for at least 3 years, then you can really build something with Villanova being a pretty good basketball team pretty much every year. Them keeping their players and them not just going straight to the NBA. They were able to develop that the team chemistry that they needed to take Kansas down. And so while they might not have that one superstar player that everyone's looking for in the draft, like for Kansas with Diallo, but they're able to have the team chemistry to beat Kansas. And so I thought that I was agreeing with you guys that Villanova had probably the best shot out of anyone to beat Kansas, but in the back of my mind, I thought, not in the back of my mind, I did think that Kansas was going to get past Villanova and make it to the Final Four, but I wasn't quite right with that pick.
When you see what Villanova has done in this tournament, and they have by beating every single team that they've played in this tournament by I want to say 10 or more going into this game against Kansas, and then coming out beating them by 5. I'll tell you one key to this game for Villanova was if you take a look at the box score, Villanova, their starters, these are the points their starters got: 13, 13, 10, 13, 7. Their bench with Bridges and Reynolds 6 and 2 apiece. Kansas had 3 guys get over 15 points: Mason, Selden, and Graham. The other 2, Lucas and Ellis, had a combined 10 and no points off the bench for Kansas. Now, I understand Kansas's total time of play off the bench was 18 minutes, but somebody has to make a shot in those 18 minutes to have a chance, and I think it was those bench points in this case that make up the difference.
Well, we've seen this issue prior when we were talking about Duke last week and how the starters or those one or two players that just made everything for the team and no one else did anything. When you have a total of 8 guys playing, or well, that's for Villanova. For Kansas, same thing. When you have a total of 8 guys playing, you're going to have people tired. You're not going to make the shots. When you go 6 of 13 and 6 of 14, it's kind of ridiculous. And you have these players that just can't be consistent. When you have Mason the third, 1 for 6 for 3-point range, you're not going to win games when you're not having your players play at a decent level. They shot 46% from the field while Villanova shot 40%. They were in that guard, but I guess when you have more shots and you have that capability of putting more in the basket, of course you're going to win games. And if you're constantly having the other team's constantly tired, you don't have much to worry about. Granted, it was still only a 5-point win, but a win's a win regardless.
I mean, Perry Ellis, their forward, right? He averages 17 points per game. He averages 17 points per game over the season, but in this game, Villanova had Ellis's kryptonite here with him shooting 1 for 5 from the field and only 4 points. I mean, when the production goes down at that steep of a rate, from 17 points per game to only 4, you're missing something that the bench players can't replace. They took 1 shot combined through the 3 bench players, and so I mean, it's just that you need something else you need someone to step up and kind of make up for the lack of production from Ellis, and that didn't happen.
I think that was Bridges guarding him for a majority of the game.
I mean, if you can, they locked him down, and from that point on, they didn't have anyone to replace that, and that's where Villanova really took charge.
So we go from Nova, Kansas to the game that came on after that. Number 2 Oklahoma taking on number 1 Oregon, and I believe I said it on Friday. When I think of Oregon, I don't think basketball powerhouse. And when you're playing a team which was hands down the best conference this year in the Big 12, when you're playing a team like Oklahoma, number 2 Oklahoma, with a superstar player in Buddy Hield who doesn't have to score to make a huge impact, he scored a bunch in this game, shot 13 for 20 with 37 points. Oregon really did not stand much of a chance in this game going in, and when they got out on the floor, they really showed it.
Yeah, I mean, when you have this dominant of a player at the college level, especially one that is so proficient from the 3-point line, shooting 8 for 13, I mean, there's almost nothing that you can do to stop him. Even though for Oregon, Cook got 24 points, it's just that Buddy Hield, he has that. Even though it's only one player, they can facilitate the basketball, get some ball movement, get him some good looks, and we've seen him throughout the tournament, even throughout the regular season for college basketball, him just torching everybody he goes up against. But for me, I thought that Oregon was going to be able to get out of this because you just have to shut down Buddy Hield, but that's obviously more easier said than done, and they couldn't stop him, and he torched them all night long.
When it comes to your guard scoring more 3-pointers than the opposing team, Oregon was 4 for 21, 19% 3-point shooting, while Buddy Hield alone was 8 of 13. The team total was 50% shooting of 12 of 24. Alone, 8 3-pointers to Oregon's 4. I mean, what else do you have to say? Stats speak for itself. Hield went off. He destroyed them. And unlike the other game, though, you had Oklahoma's bench, picking up the slack at some point, with 5 points and 4 points. Same thing with Oregon's game. At least it was more complete when you have all your players stepping in. But in this case, Hield, what a player. What a player. And that's all you really have to say about this tournament. He's gone off ridiculously a number of times throughout the season, even, except for when he's defensively shut down when we saw that one game. But since then, he's just been off the charts.
And Hield is such a good player that even when he is defensively shut down, he's used as a decoy to help these other players get open, especially Woodard and Cousins, who both had who both had pretty decent nights. Um, I heard today somebody made a comparison for Buddy Hield when he makes it into the pro level. Now Hield is not a tall guy. He's, I believe, 6'2", I believe, as a 6'4", as a two guard. So he's a little bit shorter than a normal two guard in the NBA would be. I heard somebody compare him to a guy like James Harden, a wonderful perimeter shooter, a wonderful perimeter scorer that doesn't necessarily have to play defense.
I mean, we've seen him throughout this tournament, and he's that proficient on the offensive side that even if he's not going to play that great of defense, he's going to be able to outscore his opposing, his matchup or even the team almost. He's going to be able to make up for that on the offensive end, which if he learns to play defense and surpasses James Harden in that aspect, he can really
Not that that's hard.
he can really be a superstar in this league. He's got a lot of potential, and it'll be interesting to see where he ends up going in the draft.
When it comes to defense, I feel like that's the only reason why he wouldn't go like higher than Ben Simmons evenly. I think that overall on offense he's a better player, and he should be higher up on the draft than he is, and as far as stock. But yeah, when it comes to the NBA, if you have the defense of James Harden, you're not. Granted, he has the offenses back up for it, but you can't play in a league where you're having everybody else scoring 40 points a game on you. You can't be doing that. It's obviously you're getting paid big bucks to play basketball. Learn some defense. Granted, he's an amazing offensive scorer, but just pick up the slack on defense. Bring up that draft stock. I feel like he's easily a top 3 draft pick this year. I even put him ahead of Ben Simmons. You know, some people will argue that. I feel like he's better than him. Just the defense is what causes him to lose stock.
And that's it's just a comparison, and we will definitely see going through. Personally, we've seen Harden have great success for 40-point games on back-to-back nights, and him just give up and play absolutely no defense whatsoever. So, and he's still regarded as one of the top shooting guards in the NBA. So, only time will tell with that one. But we'll move now to yesterday's games. We'll start with the late game because I know you guys have something you definitely want to say about the early game. North Carolina, Notre Dame. I felt this game was going to go one of two ways. It was either going to go North Carolina, they were going to let Notre Dame keep it close, and they were going to win by a pretty hefty margin, or North Carolina was just going to blow them out of the water. And fortunately for those watching, it was the first one that happened.
When you want a first seed to be able to play and win a game, and for this case, it happened obviously 88-74. But when that being stated, you have Jackson of Notre Dame scoring 26 points. It still wasn't enough. They don't have the Buddy Hield that we just talked about. They don't have that star guard that we've been talking about where he's going to go in the draft and do amazing things. Whereas North Carolina is obviously a tournament-tested team. They're a great team. And overall, their whole starting lineup, all over 10 points. You have 13, 11, 25, 11, and 10. It's ridiculous that this team that's been battle-tested several times can easily just go on. And granted, they were a number 1 seed and one of the few teams that people didn't have going all the way. You either had Michigan State or, like we said, Kansas, maybe Villanova. But very few, I feel, thought that North Carolina would get this far as a first seed.
I mean, North Carolina, they're one of those teams that every single year they have, a dominant basketball team. They're a powerhouse in the NCAA for the college basketball scene. But, I mean, with their coach in Roy Williams, he's able to get the most out of these players. And considering that their 2 best players, Marcus Page and Bryce Johnson, are both seniors, I mean, he's been able to keep them for 4 years, and they've just gotten better every single year. And so if you have that going for them, they've been in the tournament before. They know what what the expectation is. They know the pressure that comes with it, and so they're able to kind of through their experiences, able to turn off the pressure and be able to focus in on the game. And I think that's really what helped them throughout this tournament. And they don't have the flashy players like for Kentucky with Ulyss and their forward Labissiere. They don't have those guys that are going to go number one, number two. All those in really high in the draft, but they have guys that will get it done in the college at the college level, and it really showed against Notre Dame. They're the superior team, and even though, like you mentioned, Demetrius Jackson was able to go off for 26, they're able to withstand that and make it to the Final Four once again.
Not only Demetrius Jackson going off for 26, but VJ Beecham also going off for 18. He actually shot very well, 6 for 9, 3 for 5 from 3. We've seen Notre Dame get this close recently. I think it's been quite a number of years now where they haven't made at least the Sweet 16. This was one of the games where I felt what was going to go, or was meant to go, the number one team's way. We knew going in that Nova was going to be very tough for Kansas. We knew going in that Oklahoma was going to be very tough for Oregon to handle. North Carolina was the number one seed, where you sit there and you look at that matchup and go, okay, they have a legitimate chance. This team should not lose to their lower seeded counterparts, and they didn't. 14-point win. The Tar Heels are the only team out of the elite schools, and when I say elite schools, I mean North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, that are in the Final Four, that are going to get a chance to play for the national championship in Houston this year. And for them, I believe it is well deserved. We'll take a quick break and be back right after this. Don't go away.